If you're at all familiar with this channel, and likely even if you're not familiar with this channel, you're probably familiar with the idea of a hard swap in Dark Souls 3. Simply put, it's making a change to your current character loadout by manually opening the menu, going into your inventory, and changing a piece of equipment there. This is as opposed to soft swapping, which is usually regarded as just toggling either your main or offhand weapon to a second weapon using the D-pad. But whether it's unequipping an item, changing one equipped item for another, or equipping another item on top of the ones you already have equipped, hard swapping can be an extremely valuable way to become more successful in PvP, whether you're a min-maxed tryhard or someone who takes the game less seriously and just wants to goof around in Lothric. Hard swapping applies to all aspects of PvP as well. A very simple example is just wearing the life ring +3 at the start of a duel and swapping to the Sun Princess ring as soon as you take a hit. This both maximizes your total health pool and doesn't waste a ring slot on the Sun Princess ring's HP regen utility when you're at full HP anyway. Hard swapping is also, in my experience, just a lot of fun. It's a very tangible way that you can feel like you're exerting more control over your wins and losses. One of the most prevalent places where hard swaps are relevant is in regards to criticals. The obvious first example is a simple weapon swap after you parry someone, but before you riposte them. Essentially, the amount of time that your opponent is in a ripostable animation is longer than the time it takes you to change your weapon out, so you can parry them while your right hand weapon is, say, a curved sword, and then swap it to a weapon with much higher crit damage, like an ultra great sword, before you take the riposte. This maximizes the amount of damage you do on riposte, which will either increase your chances of killing them, or leave them at lower HP, which decreases the number of hits required to kill them, or it just makes them chug 2 Estus instead of 1. Other things you can do to maximize your critical damage before you riposte include swapping to the Hornet Ring, which boosts your critical damage significantly, and a long list of other ideas which all boost your AR, attack rating. I'm not going to list everything I've seen people do, but ideas or examples might be swapping to the Night Ring on a strength build, swapping to Lloyd's Sword Ring if you're at full HP, or swapping your offhand to the Morian Blade if you're at less than 20% HP. If you're especially fast-fingered, you could, remove all your armor and swap to Flynn's Ring, but if you're that fast-fingered, you probably don't really need to be watching this video. All this to say that there are a lot of ways to increase your critical damage before taking your riposte besides simply swapping your main hand weapon. But the easiest and most effective strategy to maximize critical damage is to wear the Hornet Ring constantly and simply swap your main hand to a stronger riposte tool. It's a pretty easy swap. With a few days of practice, your muscle memory should be sufficiently developed to consistently pull it off, and it's quite effective. I'll also mention that in general, armor swaps before riposte are pretty useless from a utilitarian point of view. The only 3 armor swaps that I thought might be worthwhile were to swap to the Blindfold Mask on a dark build, but since dark damage is bugged on criticals, you're better off swapping to a chaos weapon anyway. The aforementioned Flynn's Ring swap, which I will say would probably do some nutty damage with a dagger, but is overall too convoluted to be worthwhile, and to swap to the Crown of Dusk on an intelligence build, which legitimately can increase your damage by a good bit. Easily the most useful armor swap from a critical perspective, though it does decrease your fashion rating by approximately -8,000, so there is that downside. However, hard swapping to improve your damage after parrying someone is probably the most well-known application of hard swapping in regards to criticals. They've been talked about a lot, and it's easy to see why. Between parrying and backstabbing, parrying is definitely the easier of the two in this game, and the fact that you have an extended duration to riposte someone after parrying them makes it a natural time to consider what hard swaps could do for you. But I don't really know that I've seen people talk about hard swapping for backstabs, and I get why. Swapping to a different weapon before taking a backstab requires a lot more read and a lot less reaction. Not to mention that during roll backstabs, as infrequently as they should be used per critical efficiency 1, your inventory won't allow you to swap weapons until you come out of the roll, meaning that unless you have very fast fingers, your odds of getting the stab decrease significantly if you try and swap beforehand. So swapping before roll stabs, while technically allowing you to increase your backstab damage, is not consistent enough to make attempting the swap worth it, in my opinion. However, there are some times when swapping before backstabbing can be highly effective. These instances are less often seen, but worth covering. The easiest first example is a poorly timed heal spell or cast of Tears of Denial. The animations that come with these actions are entirely defenseless unless the caster has teammates to protect them, and additionally lock the caster in place for such a duration of time that swapping as you sprint to their back is entirely feasible. It is worth noting that you can cancel heal spells, and this might be a bait therefore, but running for their back is a low commitment move anyway, so the risk is minimal. Also, while we're here, it's worth noting that weapons with more hits on their riposte animation have a better chance of killing your opponent, despite Tears of Denial. A dagger wouldn't have gotten me the kill here, whereas an Ultra Greatsword did. Other basic examples of opportunities for swapping before backstabs involve abusing poor tracking and making hard reads. Example 1 is the Ringed Knight paired Greatsword's weapon art. The first time this guy does it carelessly, I backstab him without swapping, but I note how poorly they tracked me and make a mental note of this. The second time he uses it carelessly, I know that the tracking will be poor, and therefore that I'll have time to swap to the Black Knight Greatsword as I sprint behind him. Example 2, I don't actually swap during, but the idea here is proof of concept. I messed up and deleted the footage of this guy trying to constantly parry my turn and burns, and only saved the instance where I backstabbed him for it. When someone is behaving extremely predictably by trying to parry your turn and burns, you can turn around and know that they're about to parry. Meanwhile, you can either backstab them for it and swap, or you can just backstab them for it without swapping. I also messed up and deleted my next invasion against this guy, where he didn't try and parry my turn and burns once because he was afraid of getting backstabbed again, which is a great benefit actually because having people try to parry your turn and burns is quite annoying. Example 3. Similar to a heal spell, a Great Bow locks the shooter in place as long as they're holding R1. This gives you ample time to swap before you backstab them, as long as they don't turn around and shoot you in the face. And finally, example 4. This guy is far too spammy with his Ultra Greatsword, and once I see him swing a second time when I'm out of range, I'm sprinting behind his back, hard swapping as I do it to the Black Knight Great Axe. However, there is one more type of swapping before a backstab that's worth talking about. This is the Summon Lag Swap Backstab. Basically what happens is that you can get a backstab on the host right as they go into summon lag, and the backstab will connect, but only after the summon lag ends. But while summon lag is going on, you can mess about in your inventory as you like. Swap to the Hornet Ring, swap your weapon, you have ample time to swap whatever you like, as long as you recognize what's happening. At the end of the summon lag, you'll be yanked back to the original place where you backstabbed them, but also weirdly enough, the host will be able to iframe the damage on their screen if they roll correctly. But them managing to do so mostly comes down to luck. This type of swap backstab is very niche, but also very consistent in my experience when the opportunity does present itself. The final type of swap that enhances critical play is not a swap to increase critical damage, but rather a swap that increases your odds of getting a critical at all. The most obvious example of this is a hit stun swap parry. To shortly summarize it, during a lot of animations in this game, you're unable to swap your equipment. Your inventory screen blacks out and makes a message pop up if you try and swap during this time. However, during the hit stun animation, your inventory screen is not blacked out, so you can swap during hit stun. So the general idea is to have a loadout that can't parry, and then to swap something about your inventory such that you can parry during hit stun. This sudden change in parrying capabilities allows you to catch your opponent by surprise, allowing you to parry them more often and score a critical when you couldn't otherwise. Anyway, that's about all I have to say on hard swap crits. If you liked the video, consider subscribing for more. I find it pretty fun to watch the number on my YouTube channel slowly go up. And finally, a little bit of housekeeping for those who watch me stream on Twitch. I've recently been put in a bit of a situation where my internet is not so great, so I unfortunately don't really have the upload speeds required to both stream and play online simultaneously, and my Twitch channel will likely be a little dead for the next few months, probably. I'm hoping to sort out the issue relatively soon, so I can stream again, but until then, there likely won't be DS3 Invasion streams. Sorry. At least not on my channel. There are plenty of other streamers on Twitch who are willing to satiate your need for them. But anyway, thanks for watching, y'all. Stay safe out there, and above all, keep it silly.